Thanks for tuning in to your daily dose of quick real estate updates, local housing trends, and market data, plus tips, tools, and strategies to help you buy, rent, or invest with confidence. You're now getting ready with RealiCare Reports, powered by the innovation team, Cami and Rex. Now go grab your favorite morning beverage, whether that's coffee or tea, and let's enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty major for Florida real estate.
A new law that's really changing the game for disclosing flood risk.
Exactly. We all know Florida, especially coastal areas, faces high stakes with flooding. And, well, historically, the person selling or renting often knew a lot more about a property's past than the buyer or tenant.
So the information gap, yeah, could be devastating.
But this new legislation, Chapter 2025-166, it's set to take effect October 1st, 2025.
And what's fascinating, I think, is how it just sweeps away any wiggle room on disclosure. No more casual mentions or vague warnings.
Right. It forces standardization.
Total standardization. It doesn't matter if you're, just selling your own house or if you're a huge developer or even a landlord renting for a year or more.
So everyone's covered.
Everyone.
Yeah.
You are legally required, mandated, to give very specific, standardized information about the flood history of that specific place.
Okay, so our mission today on this deep dive,
Right.
Let's unpack this. We need to get into those core questions everyone now has to answer.
4 key ones, yep.
And crucially, that legal definition of flooding they're using, because it sounds like it's broader than people might think.
It really is. We'll break that down. It's kind of the linchpin for the whole thing.
Basically, we're giving you the essential guide to navigating this shift, whether you're buying, selling, renting, or developing.
Let's start with the disclosure itself. The consistency is probably the biggest change.
Before this, it was a bit all over the place.
Yeah, piecemeal, inconsistent. Now, whether you're looking at a standard house sale, a long-term lease, buying a condo unit, or even in a mobile home park.
It's the same core document.
The same core disclosure document. And it has to be separate.
Oh, okay. Not buried deep in the contract somewhere.
Exactly. It must be given to the buyer or tenant at or before they sign the contract or the lease agreement. Upfront visibility.
That seems important. But before we even get to the property's history, there's a big warning label, essentially.
Yes, a mandatory general warning. It's designed to clear up confusion right away.
What does it say?
It states very clearly, bold letters often, that standard homeowners insurance and renters insurance policies do not cover flood damage. Full stop.
Okay, that's a blunt heads up.
It is. And it explicitly encourages the potential buyer or tenant to go talk about getting separate flood insurance.
So it pushes them towards due diligence immediately.
Right. Puts the onus on them to think about that specific coverage.
Okay, so after that big warning, then we get into the property-specific history. What are the key questions? You mentioned 3 standard ones.
Yes. 3 core yes-no questions that focus on the owner's or landlord's time owning the property. They have to state yes or no whether they have. First, any actual knowledge of flooding that damaged the property or the specific dwelling unit while they owned it. Direct knowledge.
Makes sense. Second,
whether they've ever filed an insurance claim for flood damage.
any insurance provider.
Any provider, including the big one, the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP.
Got it. And
Third, have they received federal assistance for flood damage, which usually means FEMA aid.
Okay, so damage you know about, insurance claims you filed, federal aid you received. That seems pretty comprehensive.
It creates this transparency trifecta. Makes it much harder to hide past flood events during your ownership.
Now, you mentioned earlier this gets really interesting for renters.
Yes. And mobile home lessees, too.
What's different for them compared to, say, someone buying a house?
The law gives them a very specific, very powerful, and quite fast recourse if the landlord or park owner messes up the disclosure.
Messes up how? Like lies about it.
Exactly. If they violate the disclosure requirement, untruthfully, they say no flooding history when there actually was, and then the tenant suffers significant flood damage.
Uh-oh. The nightmare scenario you mentioned, you move in based on assurances, then bam, you're flooded.
Precisely that scenario. The law now provides a clear escape hatch.
What can the tenant or lessee do?
They get the right to terminate the rental agreement. Just walk away.
Immediate.
Well, there's a process, but it's quick. This applies to standard residential leases of a year or longer and to mobile home lot tenancies. If the landlord lied on the disclosure and the tenant then suffers substantial loss or damage from flooding.
Okay, substantial sounds like a key word there. We'll need to define that.
We will. But the consequence is they can terminate the lease.
That's a massive shift in power dynamics, isn't it?
It really is.
Is there a time limit for the tenant to use this right?
Yes, a strict one. They have to give written notice to the landlord or park owner and actually move out, surrender the premises no later than 30 days after the date the substantial damage happened.
30 days. That's a tight turnaround.
It forces quick action. And once they're out, the landlord has to refund any rent paid in advance for the period after the termination date.
But the tenant still owes rent up until they leave.
Correct. They're still liable for any rent or sums owed before the termination. It doesn't wipe the slate clean entirely, it just cuts the future obligation.
Okay, back to that word. Substantial loss or damage. This isn't just like a soggy rug, right?
Definitely not. This is where the law gets very specific, almost clinical. It's the aha moment.
So what's the threshold? How much damage is substantial?
For a regular residential tenant, it's defined based on their personal property.
Their stuff. Furniture, electronics, clothes.
Exactly. Substantial loss or damage occurs when the total cost to repair or replace that personal property hits 50% or more of its market value on the day the flood occurred.
Wow, 50%. Half the value of everything you own in that rental.
Yes, it's a very concrete number. Lose half your stuff's value due to a flood after being misled on the disclosure. You can break the lease.
Why tie it to personal property value specifically?
Because that's the tenant's primary financial stake in a rental situation, right? They don't own the building structure.
True. Repairing walls or floors is the landlord's problem.
Right. So the law focuses on the tenant's direct, quantifiable financial hit, the value of their belongings. It acknowledges how devastating that loss is and gives them a clear, calculable way out if the damage is severe and they were deceived.
It protects them from being trapped in a lease for an unlivable, high-risk place.
Precisely. It's a vital shield that wasn't really there before in such explicit terms.
And you mentioned mobile home lessees. Is it the same 50% rule?
Similar, but slightly different calculation, since the lessee typically owns the mobile home itself.
Ah, right.
The 50% threshold is calculated against the combined cost of repairing or replacing both the mobile home and their personal property inside it, relative to their total combined market value.
So it covers their whole investment on that lot. Makes sense.
It's covered the full scope, yes.
Okay, so that's a powerful tool for renters and lessees. But let's broaden back out. This isn't just about rentals, is it?
Not at all. That's critical to understand. The law deliberately applies these same standardized disclosure requirements across almost all residential transactions.
So people selling their homes.
Yes. Section 689.302 covers sellers of residential real property. They face the exact same three core questions we discussed.
Knowledge of damage, insurance claims, federal aid.
Correct. During their ownership. And they also have to include that mandatory warning about flood insurance not being part of standard homeowners' policies.
So buyers get the same level of transparency as renters now.
That's the goal. A parallel structure for transparency, no matter if you're buying or renting long-term.
What about new construction, like condos or co-ops? Developers must be included too.
Absolutely. Sections 718.503 for condos and 719.503 for co-ops mandate that developers include these same disclosures in their sales contracts.
Why is that needed for a brand new building? Wouldn't it, by definition, have no flood history?
You'd think so, but things can happen during construction or maybe right after completion, but before all units are sold, while the developer still effectively owns parts of it. And there's a really important detail here for condo and co-op buyers. The disclosure specifically covers damage to the individual unit or to the common elements.
Ah, so not just your apartment unit, but maybe the garage, the lobby, the pool area.
Exactly. If the underground parking flooded or the first floor, common areas, or maybe even significant parts of the grounds while the developer was in control.
They have to disclose that even if my specific unit on the 10th floor was fine.
Yes, because that affects the overall building integrity, potential future assessments, insurance rates, the whole shared risk.
That radically changes the due diligence needed when buying into a multi-unit building. You need to know the history of the whole structure, not just your box in the sky.
It does. Developers can't just say, your unit's fine, if the building's shared infrastructure has a known recent flood problem from their ownership period.
Okay, the scope is clearly vast. Sales, long-term rentals, condos, co-ops, mobile homes. Everyone giving or getting residential property needs to deal with these standardized forms.
It's a massive shift towards uniform transparency.
But all of this hinges on understanding what triggers the disclosure in the first place. We need to nail down that definition of flooding.
Right, because this is where the law really expands beyond what most people probably think of as flooding.
It's not just hurricanes and rivers overflowing.
No. The statute uses a three-part definition designed to be very comprehensive. It captures the big disasters, yes, but also more localized, recurrent problems.
Okay, walk us through the three parts. What are the first two? They sound more traditional.
They are, first, the classic one, the overflow of inland or tidal waters. So, yes, storm surge, rivers cresting their banks, lakes overflowing, standard flood event.
Okay, and second?
Second is the unusual and rapid accumulation of runoff or surface waters from any established water source.
Like a stream or a drainage ditch, maybe?
Exactly. Think flash flooding, where heavy rain overwhelms a nearby creek or drainage system and sends water rushing where it shouldn't be.
All right, those two make intuitive sense. Water coming from somewhere specific, the sea, a river, a ditch. What's the third part? You called it the surprise detail.
Because it is. The third component included in the definition of flooding is sustained periods of standing water resulting from rainfall.
Wait, standing water just from rain itself? Not from an overflowing river or anything?
Correct. Just rainwater pooling and sticking around.
That seems incredibly broad. What does that mean practically?
It means if your property has, say, terrible drainage, and after a heavy summer thunderstorm, the backyard turns into a lake for a day or two.
And maybe that water seeps into the crawl space or the garage.
Yes. If that standing rainwater causes actual damage to the property, the dwelling unit itself, or maybe structural elements that count as flooding under this law.
Even if it was just because the gutters were clogged or the ground wasn't graded properly, nothing to do with a named storm or a river?
Exactly. It ropes in damage caused by localized chronic drainage failures. Things that might have been dismissed before as just a leaky basement or poor yard drainage.
So if an owner knows this happens regularly after heavy rain and causes damage, they likely have to answer yes to that first question about knowledge of flooding damage.
Precisely. It connects knowledge of damage directly back to these rainfall-induced standing water events. It forces transparency about issues that aren't necessarily tied to the property's geographic flood zone rating, but more to its on-site water management, or lack thereof.
This feels like it shifts focus towards maintenance and site issues, not just location risk.
It does. It means owners planning to sell or rent after October 2025 have a huge incentive now to actually fix those persistent drainage problems.
How so?
Well, think about it. If they have this kind of localized flooding damage from standing rainwater, they face a choice.
Disclose it or fix it?
Pretty much. They can disclose that, yes, damage occurred, which might lower the property value or make it harder to rent. Or they can probably fix the drainage issue, repair the damage.
And then maybe they don't have to disclose that specific event.
Well, they still need to answer truthfully. If they filed an insurance claim related to it or got FEMA aid, they must disclose that. But if they fixed it themselves, paid out of pocket, the tricky part is that first question. Knowledge of any flooding that has damaged the property.
Even if fixed, the knowledge of the past damage event remains. Choosing not to disclose that could still be legally risky down the line if the new owner finds out.
Exactly. It raises the stakes for documenting repairs and deciding what constitutes damage versus minor water intrusion. It makes transparency about even seemingly minor fixed water issues the safer legal route.
So that broad definition of flooding, especially the standing rainwater part, is really the engine driving much broader disclosure.
It significantly increases the likelihood that any owner who's been in a property for a while will have something they potentially need to disclose. Makes no answers harder to justify.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together. Key takeaways for you, the listener. Navigating Florida real estate after October 1st, 2025. What are the big ones?
First, that standardized flood disclosure form is mandatory. Sales, long-term rentals, condos, co-ops, mobile homes, it's required. No more guesswork.
Second, remember that definition of flooding. It's broad, very broad. Includes overflow, runoff, and that crucial standing rainwater piece.
Think drainage issues, not just disasters.
And third, specifically for renters and mobile home lessees, that powerful termination.
Yes, if the landlord or park owner provides an untruthful disclosure and you subsequently suffer substantial flood damage, that 50% value threshold for your personal property or mobile home plus property.
It's a significant change in liability and consumer protection around a huge Florida risk. Chapter 2025-166, effective October 1st, 2025.
A date to remember for sure.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's leave you with a final thought to consider. Something to chew on.
Go for it.
Given that the renters and lessees escape clause, that substantial loss is legally tied to the market value of your personal property on the day of the flood.
The 50% calculation.
What steps should you be taking now, before you even sign a lease in Florida after this law takes effect? How crucial is it to meticulously document the current value of your belongings?
Ooh, good point. Like creating a detailed inventory.
Exactly, with photos, maybe receipts for big-ticket items, perhaps even appraisals for valuables, because that documentation suddenly isn't just for your insurance claim anymore.
It becomes the foundation of your legal right to terminate the lease if you're flooded after being misled.
You're proof that you met that 50% threshold. Without it, how do you argue market value after the fact?
Turns a good insurance practice into a potential legal necessity for renters. Definitely something to think about proactively.
Indeed. Well, that's our deep dive for today.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll catch you next time on the deep dive.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of Reality Reports, where real estate meets real life. For more updates, tools, and insights that will help you buy, rent, or invest with confidence, be sure to follow, subscribe, stay connected, stay informed, and stay ready. Until next time.